What's the Church of Scientology so afraid of?
This is SPTV.
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue reacting to ABC News segment called Scientology, A War Without Guns. So let's get into it.
The church characterizes everything you see on that broadcast and on this one as a shameless attempt to profit off the defamation of Scientology.
Disgruntled people make better stories than happy people, so unfortunately, that's the way our news seems to be these days.
The church points out, correctly, that ABC holds a 50% ownership stake in A&E, the network which airs Remini's show. Further, the church says, aside from this project, Remini hasn't done anything remotely successful in years.
Would you say that this, for lack of a better word, fight against the church has taken over your career?
Many people wish they had a hit show in their lifetime. I don't have to work. I still love what I do. But a big part of Leah, which the world doesn't know, is that I fight for people.
Leah Remini seems to be making a career out of attacking Scientology.
Just yesterday, 2020 sat down.
So just so you know, Monique Yingling, the facts speak for themselves, and so does your blinking. Let's continue.
Down with Monique Yingling, an attorney for the Church of Scientology, for this rare on-camera interview.
Let's just stop. Let's stop.
But everything she's been doing on her show has been scripted, rehearsed, acted, and then dramatized.
So you think her motives here are to make money and keep herself in the public eye?
Absolutely.
I've heard it before.
All right, you guys, time to deconstruct what Monique just said. And again, shout out to you, Monique, for making exactly our point. Rehearse and scripted is what the sessions that L. Ron Hubbard set to be doing in your hotels was. So before you come at us talking about how those people who not only had the horrendous experience of being abused in your hotel chains now have to go on public national television and actually start discussing unthinkable, horrific, disgusting things that happened to them because of profit.
Attention for doing this stuff.
I don't work for free. This is a very demanding job. I'm not going to justify. They get paid. They got $3 billion in assets. I'm not saying, hey, I'm the savior of your world. I have all the solutions to your life.
My life is pretty freaking awesome, and I'm functioning.
Just wanted to say there for the record, guys, that producer Dan Harris has a lot of nerve telling us you do get paid and you do this for attention. Well, first of all, to tell victims of horrific, unthinkable abuse that were subjected to that as children, which is the subject that Dan was interviewing, is rich, because his organization are the ones that want the attention and that want the profit, but don't care about what's going on.
At a very high level. My life in the last 12 years is completely turned around.
Come and pay me, give me your life, give me your money, give me your children.
Do you think David Miscavige is watching the show?
Yes.
What would you say to him?
Nothing. I think it's always like cheesy when you guys ask these kinds of questions. Like anybody would sit and go, yes, I want to talk directly to the camera. Like, do people actually bite on this one?
All the time.
Really?
Yes.
Again, Dan, for you to be making your little funny jokes right in front of the subject that you didn't even bother knowing who she was, because you're treating her just like we've been treated by all of y'all, as if we deserve what happened to us. So your tone is so highly inappropriate, it's actually nauseating.
Interesting. The only thing I hope that he hears is I'm going to continue to tell these stories.
Leah Remini may now be the world's most famous anti-Scientologist, but she's certainly not the first.
Kick, choke, through to the ground.
The church has become the vulture culture.
Coming up, two princes of the church who became its arch enemies. What price did they pay?
Why were you taking video of us?
That's next.
2020 continues with Scientology, a war without guns.
The year was 1990.
Words from a book showed me the way.
The Church of Scientology produced this publicity music video.
Take us from clear to eternity.
During the song's stirring chorus, the camera pans across a group of Scientologists singing along.
And on we stand tall. Yes.
That there is the church leader, David Miscavige, front and center. Also in the frame, two high-ranking officials, Marty Rathbun and Mike Rinder, who would later become twin firebrands of the anti-Scientology movement.
Fine that you leave. Don't complain about it.
Mike Rinder was head of the Office of Special Affairs, dealing with public relations and legal affairs. He left in 2007 after what he calls a crisis of faith, fueled, he says, by multiple instances in which David Miscavige himself punched or struck him.
David Miscavige has two personas. He has this public persona where he's all like a politician, glad handing, shaking hands, smiling, happy, and then he becomes very cruel, very controlling, very vicious.
I'll tell you, from my perspective, the person getting harassed is myself in the church.
Rathbun, who served as Miscavige's number two, worked extensively with top-ranking celebrity Scientologists during difficult times, such as Tom Cruise's divorce from Nicole Kidman.
I did little else but work to recover Tom to Scientology and help him get through the divorce.
But Rathbun told ABC he became concerned as Miscavige.
Okay, you guys. Marty Rathbun, who completed a 2-week course inside a hotel, was tasking himself with saving a marriage. So shout out to you, Marty Rathbun. Tell us exactly what kind of certificates you had in order to be doing what the hell you were doing.
Miscavige turned increasingly violent.
There was two other top managers within the church that he regularly, hit with his fists, kicked, choked, threw to the ground.
The church has consistently denied that Miscavige was ever physically abusive.
He's very demanding of his subordinates, but I have never seen, and nor do I believe, that he would ever resort to physical violence.
In videos.
Really, Monique? So let me ask you this question, Monique. Was David Miscavige very demanding with Valerie Haney? Is that how you would describe that? And can you also put on the public record so that you really start explaining yourself? Why was David Miscavige having Valerie interrogated, including but not limited to her full sexual history as a minor, in order to so-called qualify to work for him and Shelley? That'd be nice for us to hear from you, Monique. Why was that being done? Can you explain the purpose? Can you explain what the religious philosophy is behind interrogating a minor about extremely explicit subjects? So Put that on the record.
Like this, it denounces Rathbun as an apostate and insists that he was the problem. You have admitted, though, haven't you, that you were physically aggressive when you were at the upper echelons of the church?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, we all were. We had to be. It was part of the culture.
Miscavige pontificating on the other.
Thank you, Marty. You all had to be abusive. So there you are admitting. But you know what? You're not admitting, or you're leaving out, is all the abuses you were personally perpetrating on minors at the Fort Harrison Hotel after you came back from your little ship experience, after you got your certificates to be a sec checker on that little cruise you got sent after throwing temper tantrums and running away and having to be chased back. That was your little handling to send you to that ship so you could get certified. And then you could be sent to the Fort Harrison Hotel to make every minor that had the horrific faith of running into you to be screamed at, to be yelled at, to be humiliated under the guise that you were doing what to us, Marty? So that's the part of the withhold you keeping to yourself. Are you telling part of a withhold but not the rest, Marty? Are you?
Side with his arms up. Lean back, arms up, big bicep muscle routine.
The two left, but they did not go quietly. Rathbun launched a website attacking Miscavige and the church. Much more on him later.
Earlier, I spoke with Mike Rinder.
It's explosive stuff.
David Miscavige is strangling you.
Absolutely.
I'm rolling the other cameras.
Meanwhile, Rinder became a familiar face on television, denouncing the church at every opportunity.
This is an astonishingly wealthy organization that has managed to soak a hell of a lot of money out of a lot of people for a long time and accumulated it.
Have you made peace with all of it? Like all the stuff that you did?
In general terms, yes.
Rinder is now a paid consultant on Leah Remini's show, providing a running commentary on the church's alleged depredations.
Anybody who is an enemy or a critic of Scientology may have anything done to them with the idea that the ends justifies the means.
Okay.
Those two are PIs.
In a recent episode, Rinder confronted some men he suspected were private investigators hired by the church to tail him.
Who are you? Who are you?
He's also spent ample airtime decrying a controversial church practice known as disconnection, in which members break all contact with people, including family members, who the church deems suppressive. Church attorney Monique Yingling told us that when members disconnect, it's for good reason.
When someone in the church decides they no longer want to communicate with someone who's left the church, it only happens if that person starts to attack the church and attack their beliefs.
Is that voluntary, though?
Of course, it's always voluntary.
It's patently absurd. It's just ridiculous. You have the choice of whether you want to disconnect or not. The rest of that sentence is, and if you don't disconnect, then we will then deem you what is called a suppressive person, and everybody that you know that is a Scientologist will disconnect from you.
If you don't disconnect from a suppressive person, will you be kicked out of the church?
No, you won't be kicked out of the church. There may be specific services that you would not be able to participate in so long as you're connected to a suppressive person.
Right, so it's voluntary, but there are consequences if you don't disconnect.
Well, there are consequences in every choice we make in life.
Yes, there are consequences to every choice you make in life, Monique. And for you, the consequence is going to be, what in the hell are you putting your law license behind an unindicted felon for? Reach out to your professors in the law school you went to and see if they can help you craft up something to make that make sense. Your full law license is behind L. Ron Hubbard.
In this building,
The church points out that Mike Rinder has been attacking his former religion for years, and sometimes for money. That is in part why, according to the church, Rinder's family has disconnected from him.
my son is in that building. This is called the Superpower Building.
We paid a visit with Rinder to Flag Base, the church.
Fun fact, you guys, my cousin, Jackie Rodriguez, who was also abducted into these hotels as a minor, is now married to Mike Rinder's son. So there's a lot of minors that we're speaking on behalf of. And as much as the media wants to play dumb that these kids deserved to be locked up in that hotel and that they're there in their full consent, they can start explaining to us, ABC News. Write us a letter from your legal department and explain to us, please, 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 pretty please, why in the hell are these minors in there? And why don't you care?
Church's spiritual headquarters in Florida.
When's the last time you saw him?
2003, maybe. This is why I do what I do.
This visit was considerably less eventful than this one back in 2010.
You're violating the law.
When Rinder went looking for his son Benjamin with Marty Rathbun in tow.
You just need to leave right now. You're not welcome here. Sir, you're bumping up against
Watch
me.
it.
Don't bat.
Watch it.
Please do not bat.
Watch it, buddy.
Step out there.
Show me the
The church has strenuously exerted itself to discredit Rinder.
He knows that what he's saying is false.
It provided us with these interviews with his estranged children.
He's just trying to create.
The way that Monique Yingling projects, you guys, is rich. He knows that what he's saying is false. Monique, you literally must have never met a mirror in your life.
A fabricated story or something. And I said, I want nothing to do with him.
I wouldn't really call him a dad. I don't remember my dad ever being there. Ever, ever, ever. Not once. I thought he hated me.
There's something almost Shakespearean about the fact that here is this guy who was one of the fiercest advocates for the church.
Please welcome Mr. Mike Rinder.
Who's now on the receiving end of the office he served.
Yet again, shout out to you, Dan Harris, for trivializing the fact that as much as you want to blame Mike Rinder for having defended it, you must have forgotten to do your due diligence and just double check when he got abducted into the cult, when he got recruited to be part of this wide-ranging criminal racketeering conspiracy that apparently you and your employer, ABC News, have been fully castrated of the facts and are out there talking about Shakespeare. What the hell are you doing in front of a camera asking people who are sharing their trauma with you, people that you are talking out of both sides of your mouth, talking about how we're apostates, this and apostates and attackers and making, you think this is about money? You think this is about clout? Again, shout out to your projections. Don't project on us what you are doing for yourselves.
Sure, he was believing that what he was doing was right. It's because of what the church tells you that they're doing for the world that you dedicate your life to something.
We mark a new era.
Correct. And then let's also expand on Leah's point. Not only did people think what they were doing was right, it's called, how are these reporters not trauma informed? What is their excuse to have no shred of a clue of how an abusive relationship actually works in the physical universe. And again, try to make us prove to them, prove that being abused, being your naivety being ripped off when you were there as an unsuspecting minor is literally our fault.
Era. Remember that. To LRH.
Coming up,
Come on, Marty. Got anything to say?
members of the church take on another arch apostate.
I told you, put you on notice.
Cranium cameras, a car door scuffle, and then a turn nobody expected.
About as much of a 180 as you're going to see.
Stay with us. On the Gulf Coast of Texas, far from Scientology's centers of power in Florida and in California, Marty Rathbun thought he'd left it all behind.
What was it like for you to separate from this church that you were in for 27 years?
It was very difficult. I was seeing a good thing being turned into a bad thing. When I left,
Marty, thank you again for putting on the public record. See, this is when you speak without trying to launder your image. I was seeing a good thing being turned into a bad thing. So yet again, we see here in full display, you guys, how this man thought this scripture of an unindicted runaway felon was a great thing. Because you know what that writing, that rhetoric, that extremist ideology got Rathbun to have? Power. The type of power that Marty could have never amassed on his own, given by his pathetic existence, shown by the facts. He's nothing but a pathetic leech. So yeah, I'm sure he found L. Ron Hubbard's writings so good, because you know what? He stood no chance to do anything with himself, because he's that pathetic, because he's that deranged.
I didn't want to do any harm.
He laid low here for years. But in 2009, Rathbun started that scathing anti-Scientology blog attacking his former boss, David Miscavige. And perhaps most provocatively, he also started offering Scientology services independent of the church.
Come on, Marty. Got anything to say?
There you go, guys. This man never repudiated his master and commander, L. Ron Hubbard. He never repudiated the disgusting ideology that is the basis of his delusions of grandeur to abuse teenagers and minors at scale.
That's when the so-called Squirrel Busters showed up, armed with cameras. Their odd hats and T-shirts heralding the start of what Rathbun says was a long campaign of harassment, much of which he documented and posted on YouTube.
Marty, I'm with Squirrel Busters Productions. Doing an investigation on you and your squirrel technology that you're promoting.
You guys going to stick around here?
Yeah, Marty, we're here for weeks and weeks.
As long as it takes.
The term squirrel is a derogatory term for heretic, coined by L. Ron Hubbard himself.
A squirrel group is considered a group that is aberrating the technology, delivering it in a messed up way.
Outside
Yes.
the normal channels.
Correct.
Rathbun chronicled the Squirrel Busters' ongoing video surveillance, driving by his home in golf carts,
Watch my dog! Slow down!
coming up from behind in a paddle boat,
This is my home, my backyard. Big brother in Bermuda shorts. They rented a house 200 yards from my home. That's the kitchen to the surveillance house. And that is 3 slots in the blinds pointing at my house. They sent down a group of from 4 to 8 people at any given time and stayed there for 199 days.
Why the fuss? Because the church says squirrels, like this woman, are stealing and perverting Scientology techniques, like this work with clay, which was a practice established in L. Ron Hubbard's early teachings.
If you want to study a subject and you want to understand it better, then you should, be able to touch it and move it and change it, look at pictures of it.
They are violating probably the copyrights and the trademarks of the church, and whatever it is that they are practicing is not Scientology.
I think the cynic would.
Thank you, Monique. Did you also go to law school to understand what the copyrights are of stuff? And are you sure you really want to stand behind that copywriting material, Monique? The one that you apparently have not bothered to read, or you did read it and you thought, gee, what a great idea. L. Ron Hubbard was a genius. So you mean to tell me that all L. Ron Hubbard had to do was write on a piece of paper, I promise never to let a PC in the session on his own determinism, and just like that, have the power to hold someone against their will inside one of your hotels? Perhaps you want to check on that law, maybe.
Would say that Hubbard's biggest problem with squirrels is just lost income.
Reporter Tony Ortega, who's been covering Scientology for more than 20 years, is considered by the church to be, quote, a bigot and a paid anti-Scientologist. He says Scientology feels threatened by both critics and former members who still use the church's so-called tech.
If people are doing Scientology outside of the church itself, he's not getting their money. But also, I think it's just a way of controlling the people you have.
I told you, put you on notice, and you heard, do not point your cameras at my house or my neighbor's house. Their goal was to get me to say life's too short, it's not worth this, and fold up my tent and go away.
Didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen.
Interesting, Marty, because wasn't that your goal when you were abusing us as well?
If the Squirrel Busters were trying to provoke Marty Rathbun, they sometimes succeeded.
You can't do that, Marty. That's my personal property, Marty.
They put together this video of some of their best of moments.
Sit down and do an interview with me, Marty. I want to Jesus.
Rathbun's wife, Monique, finally had enough, and she sued the church.
He's pretty upset. Is he? Yeah, because he feels...
Did anyone just miss the fact that there was literal physical violence shown on TV and it just got glossed over? Anyone?
Like you're harassing his wife and his family.
Okay.
In a legal filing, she alleged that the couple had been subjected to 4 years of constant surveillance and harassment.
What's going on?
Oh, we're just doing a documentary.
Documentary on
Former Scientology deal.
After a while, when they keep up with it, you got to go, what kind of mindset is behind people doing this kind of thing? What else are they capable of?
Scientology.
Yeah, Marty, what else were you capable of that you don't want to talk about on national TV? Perhaps you can go to your little blog and start writing there. It'd be great to know.
He called the lawsuit nothing more than a pathetic get-rich scheme and an attempt to extort money.
You know what? Shout out to Scientology for getting it right sometimes, you guys. Nothing more than a pathetic get-rich scheme is exactly what Marty Rathbun's lawsuit was and is. And you know what? The benefit of the 5 years that have transpired since, where we now actually have the information that Rathbun threw his own attorney under the bus. Never mind that this wasn't even his lawsuit, you guys. This was his wife's. That's how the lawsuit was, right? She was just used as a proxy by Marty to get rich. And he did end up extorting money from the church. So, why don't you go to your little buddies at the Clearwater Police Scientology or LAPD and tell them about Marty and see if maybe they could help you, because you know what? He did extort you. And you know what? It was a pathetic get-rich scheme as Rathbun joins the ranks of Angie Blankenship and Debbie Cook, who are also cashing checks as we speak.
From the church. But then, a surprise.
Marty began to isolate himself. Something happened.
He says Rathbun's blog suddenly changed direction.
At one point, Marty Rathbun's blog was the single biggest challenge to David Miscavige and the existence of the Church of Scientology. A year later, there's not a word criticizing David Miscavige.
Rathbun was now attacking the anti-Scientology movement, calling it a cult of its own, more zealous and coercive than any.
There you go, guys. Yet again, on full display. The second in command, the second co-conspirator to this disgusting hotel chain we were put to be a part of as children, is out there now deflecting and projecting on the people that had the nerve to have a spine as they were walking out of the hotel, something Marty Rathbun would know nothing about, clearly by his statements.
Anything it accuses Scientology of, telling ABC News that his former compadres were cultivating a vicious victim complex and operating a lucrative cottage industry that he wants to avoid. And then...
Well, isn't that sweet, Marty? You want to avoid the cottage industry, but you're cashing checks from Monique Yingling. And the media can't seem to know anything because I guess they weren't trained in those hotels on how to investigate. I guess they try to pretend that you're some person that they cannot pull a single string on, even though you are just a puppet made up of strings. And there's nothing to your personality and your integrity and anything you've ever written on the record that makes any sense other than you self-profiteering from laundering your own image and then turning around, throwing anyone under the bus that you need to because you were happy to collect your little checks from Monique Yingling, the one that you and Dave went to pitch L. Ron Hubbard to. And that was happy to help you to get your little scam going.
Last January, the Rathbun lawsuit was dropped.
It was stunning. I mean, it's bizarre.
The church was as surprised as anybody else when the lawsuit was dismissed.
In court filings, Rathbun...
Oh, Monique Yingling, what you decided to put your law license on the line for, what you decided to go on the public record and say has literally not aged well, Monique. You were just as surprised. I'm sure you were shocked, Monique. I'm sure you were literally, utterly shocked.
Rathbun's wife said the suit was dropped only because she lacked the resources, the time, and the motivation to litigate against Scientology's army of lawyers. This week, Marty Rathbun declined our request for an interview.
Little Marty Rathbun, that before getting paid checks by Monique Yingling, all of a sudden does not want to have any comment. He talked to Vice, he talked to CNN, he talked to the Tampa Bay Times, he talked to ABC News, he talked to Rolling Stone, he talked and talked and talked and talked until what was it that you called it, Monique? Get rich scam extortion plot that actually materialized? Oh yeah, that one.
It's about as much of a 180 as you're going to see.
But if one...
That's where we're going to end up this video, guys. To really sit here and think about, yet again, the media that has never hold any of these people accountable whatsoever, but have been cashing checks themselves for their own ulterior motives and purposes, and couldn't have given any less of care to actually do something about this information that they keep mining so that they can make money for their advertisers. And shout out to all the advertisers putting their stuff on these segments. Shout out to you. You're the one that is funding these entities from literally doing not their job, literally just involved in their own scheme of whatever it is that they're calling it. It ain't journalism, I'm sure. I'm sure some professors that were out there that taught these people journalism are rolling in their grave, wondering how in the hell all that schooling that they did turned out to be this pathetic, watered down money grab that apparently ABC News thinks is amazing. And apparently all the legal department in that institution gave a green light. We're going to keep exposing your corruption, and we're going to start holding the enablers of the abuse accountable. And if you've been profiting off our pain, you can start writing us some letters and telling us why in the hell you're doing that. And you can start actually making amends, actually start taking responsibility. And if there's any kind of media enforcement agency out there that is supposed to figure out why in the hell these segments are just being exploited for pain, we would love to hear how any of y'all are going to hold anyone accountable for anything. Because as much as the media just want to point the finger and project at the people in the hotels of Scientology that are under the spell of an indicted runaway felon L. Ron Hubbard, that have that excuse. But you know who doesn't have that excuse, you guys? It's the media. The corporate media has not a shred of excuse, but a ton of checks they've been cashing. It's time to hold them accountable.